Hey, what's up, everybody? Hey, I wanted to come to you with a unique episode today and something standalone, something just with me, just a monologue, I guess. I see guys doing this all the time and talking for hours, and I don't know how they do it, but I've got something I felt like I wanted to share just out of a celebration, out of just a tribute to who God is and how good He is. And I just wanted to share some things that I have learned during this time that I've been hosting a podcast. And we're coming up on a year that I've been doing this. And man, as I started thinking about this journey and the people I've met and the connections I've made, I thought about, man, there's got to be a lot I've learned as well. And just so happens there's 10 things that I came up with, and I wanted to share those with you. So, these can obviously, oh, by the way, apply in life as well, not just to hosting a podcast, because I'll be honest, I've had no formal training, as many of you may have thought to yourself as you listened, that it's pretty obvious that I haven't had any formalized podcast training. But it's all about conversations. It's all about relationships. It's all about getting out of the way and letting God do what He empowered and gifted me to do, and let other people tell their story. So I've been blessed to have that opportunity, but I've learned some things. And so hopefully this can apply to your life, can apply to me as I go forward as a husband and a father and a employee and a brother in Christ and a teammate and a just what other roles that I have. But I know these apply beyond just the camera and the microphone. So let me get into this real quick. As always, I want to take a minute to give a shout out to sponsors for this show: Last in Line Leadership, the people at Summer Moon Coffee here in Conroe, friends of ours, who have just opened the store and are having tremendous success and offering tremendous products. So if you're in Conroe, go see Angie and her team at Summer Moon Coffee on South Loop 336 in Conroe, and also Randy Levere and Armored Nation Coffee Company. And I look forward to seeing Randy's new logo. He's made a couple of different changes and aesthetically and just some upgrades, I think. So his product is state of the art. It's a wonderful coffee. So you can order that online as well. So we get into these things that I've learned, and I'm always trying to learn. I've grown up learning the hard way most of my life. Tried to pass on a different standard to my children and tried to give them a little bit of the answers to the test based on my mistakes. But we all kind of have to learn things differently in our own way. And I've learned hard lessons, be honest with you. But this podcast, everything I've learned, every lesson that I've stumbled across has really been kind of pleasant, been eye opening, been one of those aha moments. The light goes on, a couple mentors, couple things I've seen other people do, and it just it's opened my eyes to some things, and it's been very much a blessing. So the first thing, I bet you guys are wishing I'd just get into the top 10 list here, aren't you? So stop qualifying it and get into it. So that's what I'm going to do. Number one, these are in no real particular order of importance. So this is going to be a no-brainer for some of you, but number one thing that I learned in year one of doing this podcast is create new connections. So man, you can't have a podcast with interviewing people without new connections. It would be easy to just kind of dip my toe in the water and reach out to the easy, convenient circle of influence that I have and friends in my inner circle and just bring them on and have them talk about themselves. But it does take an element of risk. It does take an element of humility. It takes an element of effort to really try to dig in and create new relationships. And those relationships have been really, those doors have been opened based on current relationships I have and those connections and referrals and people that I've been introduced to and just gotten to learn about. And it's been crazy. It's been awesome. To develop a network of people that I would have never ordinarily come across in my life, probably our paths most likely would never have crossed. To develop those networks of those people is opened a whole new world of just getting to know different people. And what they're good at, what they're passionate about, what God has done in their life, some of the trials and tragedies that they've gone through, and now has become part of their story. It's just been amazing, and now I look back on it and down the list of people that I've had as guests on my podcast, and I just never would have been able to dream it. So it's just really nice to try to, to develop a network and to take those risks of walking out and really stepping out and reaching out to people, text messaging a stranger. That's something that people have a real problem doing. And I'll be honest with you, I guess ignorance is bliss, because I just, I don't know anything other than to just experiment and just try it. And all they can do is tell me no thanks. But that might be for somebody out there. I don't know. If you're really struggling to build up the courage to reach out to somebody new, or to reach out and build a new connection, I say I'm living proof that there's value in it. I've just asked questions. I've asked for referrals. I've just been really just kind of blatantly obvious and upfront, maybe even to the point of annoying to some of the guys I've met in this space of podcasting. And I've just asked them to introduce me to people, and it feels a little awkward at times, but you're surprised when they are willing to help you. Like it's pretty refreshing in a world where every headline that's out there on social media or on a newspaper, or a news channel, every headline's gloom and doom, and you know if it bleeds, it leads on most news stations. But man, it's refreshing to know that people really actually are wanting to help you. And so I've asked for referrals. I've asked that question when I didn't really want to or feel like it. And the response has been great. And I've met those people through that. Just referrals and a friend of a friend of a friend. I mean, you guys know how the grapevine works and how social networking is, the value of it. Sure, it can be toxic if used improperly, but if used right, I'm here to tell you that it is a valuable resource. And then the other point to creating new connections, as my first bullet of what I've learned in the year of podcasting, is this last one. To stay connected with people, that takes effort, man. It takes intentional, and if you're keeping score, I may say the word intentional about 16 or 17 times here in this time we have. But I mean, I can't overstate it, really. Intentional is a big thing, and to stay connected with people. I gotta tell you, if you're waiting on people to knock on your door or ping you on your phone in order to have relationships, you're probably going to be waiting a long time. People just have a life. They are busy. You have a life too, but I think it takes somebody stepping out and taking that first step of really just like saying, "Hey, I want to invest in you," or I want to, initiate dialogue because I think you have something to offer. And if you're bringing value and they're bringing value, then I mean, it's a relationship worth building or worth pursuing. And so it takes effort to stay connected, and it takes effort on your part. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. I mean, that goes with anything. And I guess having 25 years in sales, different industries, I've been forced to A, deal with rejection a lot, and B, really just kind of stop sitting around waiting for somebody to come to me, stop waiting for the business, start really taking control, putting my hands on the wheel and going out and taking a step and doing something about it. And staying connected is important for you to take the lead in that. So number two, moving right along here. Number two is caution in comparisons. And in a year of listening to the podcast, if you've been so faithful, I appreciate that. But even in the most recent couple episodes, if you're new to the podcast, I mean, you'll know I'm a big alliteration person. You would think that with as many analogies and alliterations and different little goofy, clever one-liners, I guess. I don't know. I'm a nerd like that. But with as many of those, you would think I was an English major, and I really couldn't be further from that. Shout out to all, in much respect, English majors. Bless your heart, I couldn't do that. So, caution in comparisons. Man, getting into this and having a competitive, I don't know, DNA in my bloodline, I think, has allowed me some good things, in starting this podcast, and it's allowed me to really stay consistent, and I'll get to that later, but it's allowed me to really go out guns blazing, sprinting in the direction of do as many interviews as I can, post as many thoughts and encouraging, inspiring messages on social media, and just get out there and just throw it out and see what happens. Well, if you look around, there's people have been doing it a lot longer and to a lot more degree than I have, with a lot bigger audiences, and quite frankly, maybe even a lot better message than what we have here. I don't know. That's all subjective, and the it's in the eye of the beholder, I guess. But I look around and I see some really good people doing really amazing podcasts and really just lighting up social media and with good content, not just for the sake of standing behind a keyboard and spouting off, but just really some good stuff. And so I've been tricked by my own self. That's not a term for English majors that are out there critiquing me. My own self. Uh, I've really been kind of tricked into comparing myself to those people unjustifiably. But again, to keep an edge, I think maybe justifiably looking and saying, okay, they're doing this right. Maybe I should implement part of that. Or there's a component of that guy that maybe I should try to get better at. So I mean, there's an element there. There's a fine line, but caution and comparisons, and that's anywhere in life. Like I'm guilty of that in my job. I'm guilty in that, just my neighbor's got a swimming pool, so I got to have one, one of those type of deals. But um, I would say that there is a danger in getting too granular and really getting on that, hovering over that with a microscope, and really helicopter parenting yourself and your own platform is maybe a trap to fall into. And I found myself doing that a couple times over the last year, and it's really, thankfully I noticed it and I caught it. But it can be toxic, because you can really get sucked into the vacuum of wanting a number of likes, wanting a number of followers and subscribers. And if you don't get this sort of affirmation from your post on social media, or you don't have X amount of views on your podcast, man, it's the world's coming to an end. Well, I, I mean, that couldn't be more ridiculous. And I'm talking to myself in this, but I would tell you, like, when you're in life and you're looking around and you're wishing you had something somebody else has, or you're wishing you could do what they're doing, or make the money, or have the status, man, I encourage you, sit back and think about what God's got you doing and why, and think about what you're good at, and your skill set doesn't necessarily translate to what the guy next to you is doing and his skill set. So nothing, or not everything, is translatable, transferable. um, and what, I think the Bible talks about, every portion of the body is significant, and the hand should not be asking, why can't I be a mouth, or a nose, or whatever. And so that example is, you know it is what it is, but it's very relevant in this case, because we do that. And tracking the numbers is a dangerous place to be in. Now, if you're a big time podcaster and you've got millions and millions of views, then obviously you're generating income, and you look at those metrics, and you have to create, you know, uh, processes that derive the most from what you're doing. And I'm trying to do that too, but I don't make any money from this. This is an income source. And so to track the numbers is dangerous, in my opinion, on my side for this deal. But, there's also that fine line of admiration versus envy, right? So I can envy somebody, and then that means I want what they have, or that means I'm jealous. And then it kind of seeps into your spirit in a negative context. And the admiration piece is healthy. And I think that there's some humility that comes along with admiration. And then I think there's pride that comes along with envy. And so I think what I've learned in this regard is that admiration's okay. I admire those people that are out there getting those big time 5-star guests on their podcast and talking for an hour and a half. And, they've got um, a store with tons of merchandise, and people are just all, crazy traffic on their website and this kind of thing. And I'm just using those as examples. I mean, that doesn't mean that they're better people. I'm just saying I admire the fact that they took something in such infant stages, like I've got mine now, and they built it to this, 5, 6, 7 years later, but they've accomplished, and they would never say they've arrived. And I'm not saying that either, but man, to watch that is admirable. I respect that. And I think maybe that's something to shoot for. Um, so that's what keeps me kind of going as far as what's a healthy comparison versus what's not. And I would say just the thing too on this is to keep my eye on the ball. Man, I want to be transparent here because I think there's people listening to this that are maybe getting distracted. We're coming toward the fourth quarter of 2021, and I think we all got the rope-a-dope factor kind of kicked in with this COVID deal, and we all kind of went to sleep on the fact that it was still serious. I think we let down our guard a little bit, and now here we are again with numbers spiking and restrictions and those kinds of things. And so I think just to keep our eye on the ball in life is an important thing, and not be distracted. These caution with comparisons, as we're talking about here in number 2, I'm guilty of that. But I do know the triggers, and I do know myself well enough to know when it's starting to get a little bit poisonous. And so I want to step back. I want to keep my eye on the ball. I want to understand what the whole point of this, where the origin of this started. And it was with God, impressing on me. I remember on my back patio during COVID in the summertime of 2020. And I remember thinking, wow, are you really telling me to do this? And he was. And why is he telling me to do this? Well, because I believe there's stories out there that are inspiring and encouraging that I can be a part of, that I can facilitate those dialogues and discussions that can down the line, downstream bless somebody. And in a world of needing encouragement, hungering for encouragement, the world needing to hear a good story, a story of going from trauma and tragedy to triumph and victory and these kinds of things. And man, I think you can't have too much of that. So I don't know. That's the encouragement on number 2 for you. The caution and comparisons. I'd say keep your eye on the ball for sure. Number 3, and this one should have been number 1 and could probably be a bullet point for all 10 of these, but I made it its own bullet point because it's around conversations that we're having on these podcasts. So number 3 is invite God and ignite conversations. So inviting God will ignite the conversation. I can't tell you how many times before I go onto a podcast recording, and maybe I'm a little nervous because I don't know this person that well, or maybe I'm a little intimidated because of how much they've accomplished and who they are and their standing in society. And, maybe they're they're a podcaster and they've got all these followers. And so I go into those, and if I let myself, I could get sucked into that intimidation piece. But man, just stopping for a moment and asking God to just be involved, to come into that moment and just let me have the words to say, let me have discernment and wisdom, and let me be able to articulate and be interested and curious, and really get the person talking about themselves, which is really, that's what we're trying to do. It's not about us. These podcasts are not about me. And I don't sit on here and talk for 30 minutes by myself, because I like hearing from other people. And there's nothing wrong with folks that do talk for 30 minutes by themselves, because that's a gift and we do appreciate that person. But in my situation, like, inviting God has ignited every conversation. I mean, I literally can't think of, out of 77 and change, maybe I guess 76, 77 episodes that I've recorded, I can't say that there was a conversation that I struggled to have, or that I felt like was pulling teeth or was just not working. Like, I don't feel like I ever had that. And it all goes back to God just showed up, and I got out of the way and did what I felt like he was telling me to do. I was obedient and genuine. So I think being authentic is a big part of this too. But inviting God ignites conversations, and you can't pray enough in life in general. I mean, if you're listening to this and you're not a believer, I'd love for you to reach out to me, because I'd like to get your perspective. on where you are in that journey, if you are in that journey of spiritual growth or curiosity, or you're kicking the tires on Christianity or on Jesus, this whole Jesus thing. But I to those believers out there, you can't pray enough. I think prayer is how He wants to have that intimacy with us. And so, I also try to seek a little bit of wisdom prior to the recording or prior to the interview, because again, these are the top 10 things I learned. This may not be for you, but for me, I learned that the more I can learn about the person, I mean, this is fairly intuitive, straightforward, but the person I'm interviewing, if I get to know them and then try to, the wisdom comes from your curiosity and your genuine interest in them and their story. And then you start to uncover and peel back layers. And man, you get behind the curtain with some of these people, and it's really enlightening, and it's really it's refreshing to hear how real, transparent people can be. But to seek wisdom before you go into those conversations. I mean, preparation is, I'll give Drew Brees props again, greatest quarterback of all time, Drew Brees. He said the will to win is not as important as the will to prepare. And I bet if you asked every person, just even specifically to podcasting, you take the top 10 podcasts, you talk to the host of those shows, and if they say being prepared was the most key point to their success, I would not be surprised. So that's just my 2 cents on that. But the other thing on inviting God and igniting these conversations is to be careful to, and when I say careful, not in a negative way, conscientious, cognizant of bringing glory to God through your interviews. I guess there's mixed emotions on podcasters who just kind of use it as a pulpit to pound people with the Bible and scripture and faith and that kind of thing. And this is certainly a faith-based podcast. And I'm not apologetic about that one bit. But the conversations sometimes will go there, but then we can camp there, or we go on to this person in their life, or, we give little tidbits and plant seeds of faith in these episodes. But ultimately, we always bring it back to God's glory. I mean, I think I end every episode in the last, I don't know, several with "be blessed," because I just want people to be as blessed as I feel by doing these. And if we give God glory for everything in our life, like we give Him the credit, for all of our good things. And I think that in these interviews, it's my duty, it's my obligation. I feel a sense of pride to give all of the success of this podcast to God. And because He gave it to me, He's blessed it. He's given me guests that I never would have thought would have. So anyway, that's number 3, invite God and ignite conversations. Number 4, initiate the impossible. And some of these could overlap. I mean, obviously 10 things that I've learned in a year. There could be some overlap, could be some crossover, could blend a little. One bleeds into another possibly. So bear with me. I know you're patient with me. But what I'm saying by initiate the impossible is, man, I can't tell you how many times I emailed somebody that I thought would never respond, let alone agree to be on my podcast. And you would be amazed. Like, if I would have let the intimidation factor of who I thought they were, or their status, or putting them on this pedestal, if I would have let that impact my next action, my next step, I would have missed out on so many good guests on this show. And I'm not going to name them by names, but okay, maybe I will. I will tell you, some of you know about the Project 222 that I did that's more tailored to college athletes, right? And I emailed a professional football player, an NFL quarterback, very prominent quarterback, Kirk Cousins from the Minnesota Vikings. And I want to tell you, when he responded, number one, I about dropped my phone. I'm glad I wasn't driving and reading email, of course. But man, just to have a dialogue with him on email blew me away. And so when we set the time to do this episode, I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? He's an NFL quarterback. I mean, give me a break. I'm just a guy. And that thing went so well. I had so many good responses to that. People just telling me they couldn't believe I got Kirk Cousins. Well, it wasn't me. I mean, I have to give Zach Willis credit. He lives in Kentucky. Used to coach at Michigan State. Was there when Kirk Cousins was there. Through another guy, Bob Brum, who was a guest on my show, introduced me to Zach, who put me in contact with Kirk. I mean, the list goes on and on of just connections and referrals from people, and just down the line. I mean, it's amazing how God shows up. But initiating the impossible was me actually asking somebody, hey, do you know anybody in this athletic space that might be a prominent figure that I could bring on? Oh, okay. So following that, hey, do you know anybody? And then all of a sudden I get this guy, Kirk Cousins, who, would I walk up to him on the street? Probably not. But initiating what I thought was impossible turned out God said, it's possible, and here you go. And oh, by the way, you're going to have a great episode with him. He's a great down to earth guy. And oh, by the way, God talking says, here's a blessing of all the people that viewed that episode. So anyway, initiating the impossible is huge. Just pursue the guests that you think might be intimidating. What are they going to do? Like, they're just people. This is 100-year-old expression, but they put their pants on just like you do, and just like I do. So the next part of this initiating the impossible is ask for feedback from those people that you might admire most. Do they have a time to really coach you? Probably not. If they're in a position of prominence, or you respect or admire just the work they're doing, chances are they're very busy, or busier than you at the very least. And so we can also oftentimes talk ourselves out of that, but pursue them. Ask them a question. What did you think of our episode? What can I do better? I always want to give a shout out to Ryan Mickler from Order of Man. The Order of Man podcast. He's a phenomenal interviewer. He is literally, hyperbole is overdone, but he's one of the best interviewers I've heard. And, I've heard a lot even outside the podcast space, and he's very good. But had him on the show, number one, I didn't think he would ever have the time to be on. Number two, didn't expect him really to be as down to earth and genuine and authentic as he was, which he is. And so there's two surprises. And then asking him to, look at the episode and give me feedback, which he agreed to do. So there's three impossibles that if I hadn't initiated, I never would have really gotten the benefit of. So ask for feedback from those people that you admire, or even that you bring on your podcast if you're trying to start one. I encourage you, definitely listen to some of this and take notes, because I've done it. I've been down the road, and I've learned from the people that went before me, just like you can. I certainly don't have all the answers. Anyway, moving along here, aggressively utilize media with strangers. And that's a weird one, right? The stranger danger factor. Do we reach out to people on, Instagram or social media, and, hey, you don't know me, or, hey, I noticed you did this and I have a question about that. We're in a world where nobody trusts anybody really, but I think this is a place where you can initiate what you might think is impossible and reach out to people. People love to help each other, believe it or not, regardless of what the 1% of the population out there that's trying to tell you that everybody hates everybody. People really will respond and want to help. So even if you don't know the person, hey, I noticed what you're doing. I've been following you a couple weeks now and like your content. Hey, would you consider being a guest? Or, hey, what do you think about this? Or do you have a minute to have a 5-minute conversation? Do you have 5 minutes, I guess would be a better way to say that. Do you have 5 minutes to have a conversation? And man, I've had some really good response. And it shows me that there is hope for America. And I think strangers are only strangers for as long as you allow them to be. And if you come with value, you come with genuineness, and you come with just a humility, all of a sudden you build a connection and they're not a stranger anymore. So initiate the impossible. So anyway, these are top things that I've learned, over the year of doing a podcast. And man, as I'm doing this list, it's just all kind of just exploding off within my spirit. It's like igniting something in me as I start writing these down. And I'm like, wow, I didn't realize I learned this much. And that's a side note, kind of a caveat to this. If you're in a place in life where you're just kind of going through the motions and you feel like you're not really learning anything or growing, sit back and write some stuff down. You might be surprised at what you've done or come across in your time, your last 6 to 12 months. You might be surprised at the things you have done and have learned and how you've grown. But you won't really know that until you write them down. So number 5 is lean in to learning. Um, Man, I really be honest, I wasn't a big school guy. I mean, I had to be in high school. My dad was a teacher and a coach. My parents, really, uh, I don't know, encouraged encouraged finger quotes top performance in school. Probably because in truthfulness, they knew I wasn't going to make it as an athlete or an actor or a singer. So they're like, this is your way out. But no, I think it was, I didn't like school, let's just say. And I liked college, but I did not like school when I got to that age. There's a difference. And those of you listening, ask your parents or somebody that knows the difference with what those are, but I'm not going to get into that. But anyway, all that to say, lean into learning. Nobody wants to take extra time to read a book. Nobody really wants to take time to ask someone's help to better themselves. Like, people nowadays are less likely to do that. Why are we reluctant? Pride, laziness, apathy. We're stuck in the world of convenience. Why do I need to really grow or get better? I got everything at my fingertips that I need. But lean into the learning. I mean, teach yourself a skill. Man, when I started this podcast, I had no idea how to edit. And you'll probably attest to that if you watch like the first 20 episodes. I don't know how many, but when I started really digging into editing, but everything was raw. I just let it go. And, they were 55 minutes, 60 minutes. And that kind of let me off the hook with having to learn anything. I was just like, oh, I'm going to be raw. It's going to be real. It's going to be, every word's going to be recorded and we're just going to put it out there. Well, I mean, that sounds good. That sounds bold and courageous, but I think it was really, now looking back, I think it was really more just me not wanting to learn a platform that could help me edit my video. And so I started playing around with this thing and man, it opened my eyes to a whole new world. Like, I will tell you, and I had to fail a lot at first. And good friend of mine, Chip Baker, shout out the Success Chronicles. And I will tell you, he was like, just do it. Just go try it, man. Play around with it. And I did, and messed some stuff up and had to figure some stuff out. But I will tell you now, today, I look at some of the stuff that I'm doing and I'm thinking, hey, if you could see me kind of punching myself in the shoulder like attaboy, that's what I'm doing right now. So no, patting myself on the back is not one of my strong suits, but I will tell you, teach yourself something and go into learning something new with the expectation that you might mess up. That right there, if we can disarm the entire situation, I think we're ahead of the game. Because if we can just say, look, I'm going to learn this, but in the beginning, it's going to stink and I'm going to suck at it, but I'm going to learn and I'm going to do it, and have an end point in mind that you are going to do it. Quitting's not an option, and that you will fail in the beginning. If you can do those two things, man, I think we can get down the road a long way together. So anyway, I would say watch and learn other successes. That sounds pretty obvious, doesn't it? Like, oh, that's what he's doing. Okay. Well, that guy's yard, I love the way that guy's yard looks. Man, what's that mower? Oh, okay. He's got one of those. I'm going to go buy one of those mowers. Oh, he does it this way. Okay. That's what I'll do. Hey, I mean, there's value in that, but at times it gets into the whole, what I talked about earlier, caution and comparisons. That's not what we're doing. We're trying to glean off of each other. We're trying to iron sharpening iron, right? The Bible talks about, and I think watching and learning other people's success takes an element of humility, takes an element of courage, takes an element of just self-evaluation and awareness and knowing what your limitations and weaknesses are. Yeah, I said it. Weaknesses. We have weaknesses. I mean, participation trophy world that we live in says we can't use that word. I'm using it. So learn what your weaknesses are and watch somebody else that's good at that and balances your weakness and find out how to get better. That's pretty short and sweet on that part. And then always seeking ways to improve. Like, there's always ways to improve. I can't, you won't find a professional athlete out there that isn't trying to improve in the off season, isn't trying to shave off a half a second or a tenth of a second off their 40, isn't trying to figure out how to make that catch in the back of the end zone one-handed. Like you're not going to find anybody that achieves at a high level that's not always trying to improve. So that's the top 5. So as we go down into the last 5 here of the top 10 things I learned in year 1 of doing the podcast. Number 6 is include your inner circle. And this one's going to be fast, but it doesn't diminish the importance of it. I think because it's so straightforward, I don't need to spend a ton of time on it, but it does not at all water it down. But including your inner circle means your family. Like my kids know when I have a big guest coming on. Like they were jacked when I had Kirk Cousins on. Like I told them about a couple of these people that are influential, and I showed them who they are, and even sent them a couple of their podcasts and said, I'm having this guy that does this great work on my podcast. Can you believe that? So I include them in that. I invite them to be a part of those celebrations. Cause I mean, as a family, if we're not sharing our victories, what are we doing? We're missing the moment. And so, I share those wins. I share when I have a good episode, which is really nearly every time because of the guest that's on there. It's all because of them. And I really can't say I've had a bad episode, in my opinion. Okay. I mean, I guess if you're going to give me some feedback and tell me, yeah, episode 24 was awful or whatever. But no, I think because of the guests and because I invite God in beforehand, we've had good episodes. But I share that. My family wants to know when I'm in here, I don't know, a couple hours a week, doing work for a podcast that I don't get paid for, and I'm editing and I'm preparing, and then I'm doing a recording. And I mean, they have to be quiet. Like they're invested in it almost as much as I am. So it's important to show them the fruit from that work, and, encouraging them to listen to the podcast. I've got a 13-year-old daughter, and it might not be right up in her wheelhouse to listen to a man's episode about masculinity. But I have them listen. I will ask them what they think. And, my older 2 are listening to the stuff, and my 15-year-old's getting excited about it now. I think it's important that they see our vulnerability in this process. Explain to them our fears and struggles. I talk to my kids about, man, I'm nervous. I've got so-and-so coming on tomorrow, and I've done all my preparation, but I'm a little nervous. I'm not going to lie. And they're like, yeah, I can see that or whatever, but show them that you're vulnerable in that space, that even the stuff they're going through is not uncommon to us as adults. We have fears, we have apprehensions, we have insecurities, and I think processing those with them only makes them better down the road. And when they see me come out of a recording that they knew I was nervous about, I think, and I'm jacked and I'm fired up and it went well, and give God the glory through it. And they're like, wow, okay, Dad, gets nervous and he actually didn't die and everything was all right. And God showed up, and okay, we got this, science class isn't that bad. So I think it makes a huge difference. So anyway, include your inner circle. Number 7, cultivate consistency. There I go with alliteration again. And apparently the theme is the C word, the C sound. I had caution and comparisons, creating new connections. Now I've got cultivate consistency. Well, true to form. Okay. Apologies, but not really. So consistency is something that the world probably could stand a little bit more of. We quit way too easy because we're allowed to, right? We've got a world full of enablers who enabling their kids to quit a sport if it's not good, or if a coach is mean, or, drop a class if you're not passing, or if you're not making an A in it and it's going to mess up your GPA, drop it. Hey, so I think we get into this sketchiness, and sketchy, in my opinion, is defined as somebody that's just inconsistent and quits real easily. And there's some other words for that too, but I can't use them on this show. Previous life, I might have. But anyway, yeah, so sketchy is not an option. And then I'd say remove the feelings, that you have about it. If you can just eliminate feelings from the equation, when I'm talking about consistency, yes, feelings have their place and they're valuable, and definitely shouldn't just ignore our feelings altogether. But when it comes to just being consistent, do it anyway. Even if you wake up and you might have had a little bit of a sore throat this morning, but you can still talk and you have a recording on a podcast, do it anyway. Like somebody's out there depending on you to do it. at the very least, the person that made a commitment to be on the podcast as your guest made a commitment. So do it. And if you don't feel like it, so what? I mean, I don't really care. I've had moments, and I will say not often, because I love doing this. And it's like Christmas morning when I wake up and I have a recording that day. But if in the off chance, maybe in the future, that I don't feel, hand quote, feel like doing it, guess what? Do it anyway. Cowboy up, whatever you want to, fill in the blank to your favorite, manly saying or whatever. But yeah, do it anyway. Might be all I have to say about that. But I mean, understand that the calling is bigger than you. Like if you're worried about how you feel in that moment, but you've done X amount of episodes in a row, and if I take the day off, what's the big deal? Or what if can I just reschedule with this guy? I mean, it's not a big deal. Going back to our intimidation factor earlier, he probably doesn't want to be on here anyway. He probably has better things to do than be on my podcast. So we'll just reschedule. I don't feel like it. No. I mean, that's the coward's way out. The calling's bigger than you. So understand, in my situation, I'll speak for myself. Understand that God gave me this idea and put me in this situation to have this platform. And I stepped out in obedience to do it. And it's been blessed. It's been fruitful. So understand that calling's bigger than me, bigger than my feelings. So do it anyway, is my advice to myself if I ever get to a point where I just maybe don't feel like it. So, yeah, that's what Cultivate consistency is. So number 8 of the top 10 things I learned in a year of doing a podcast, hosting a podcast. Still weird to hear myself say that, but it's been a great ride. I can't imagine not doing it. Number 8 is empower and encourage. So, there are people out there that maybe are a little fearful about starting a podcast, or they feel like they want to write a book, or they feel like they have a voice, they just don't know how to use it, or they feel like there's so many podcasts out there. The world doesn't need another person who thinks they know everything talking on a microphone and recording it. But that's not really what we're doing. So we could disarm that situation, but empowering them. I can be a resource to somebody, just like I had one when I was trying to start this, and I was fearful and insecure, and just the fear of the unknown, and who really wants to hear what I have to say. Itis, that's what I would call that syndrome. But you have the ability to help somebody behind you that's in the same shoes you were a year ago or 10 years ago or whatever. But other people that are just starting out need that. They need you to help empower them. You walked the path they're about to walk. So don't let that be for nothing. And, there's peers in this space. I think we get caught up in this whole competition thing. I have guys that are about the same, I don't know, level of audience, size of audience, caliber of podcast that I have, that I could really get edgy about it. I could really get into insecure and prideful and competitive and just be like, I think that's stupid. He does that. I listened to that episode. He didn't know what he's talking about. Or, he could be a way better interview. I could get real edgy, but I don't. I really and truly don't. And in my past, I might have had that quality, but I look at it as, man, we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to make people better and encourage people and share our experiences so others can learn from it. So those peers of mine are not my competitors. They're allies. And I want to make them better, and hopefully they want to make me better, and we lock arms and we do this thing as an army. And the world needs an army of good, because there's certainly an uprising of bad. And I think, good has got to counteract and outweigh evil. So that's what we're trying to do, is all do the same thing and keeping our eyes on the prize and moving forward together. And then just, another thing to empower and encourage people is to just foster communication. Like I said earlier, initiate something, initiate dialogue, reach out to somebody. Don't wait for them. This is what I've learned I've learned the hard way, and I've learned the right way. So I've done it the right way based on how I've done it the wrong way in the past. And that's growth in just my own personal life. But man, reach out to somebody. Don't put words in their mouth. Don't disqualify them before you ever reach out to them. Oh, they don't want to talk to me. Don't say, you don't know that. So I say, just foster that communication and brainstorming, because other people are trying, just like you're trying, just like I'm trying. They have the same insecurities. They have the same doubts and fears and questions. So let's walk alongside them instead of stepping over each other. All right. So number 9, passion to purpose. I talk about this a lot. People can call it calling. People can call it what are you interested in versus what are you good at. I Passion leads to purpose, man. If you identify what you're good at and you realize that that fires you up, uh, that's a passion that leads to something. And you should let it. You should just absolutely empower that emotion and those passions into something that could be, you never know, your purpose. God can multiply and expand that. I'm living proof. This whole podcast, writing, interviewing people, posting encouraging content, those kinds of things. Like I get fired up about it. I like it. Because I feel like there's somebody in that moment. There's going to be somebody where what I said meets them right in that moment. It meets them right in that catastrophe, right in that fear. It meets them right in that circumstance of their life. And I'm nobody, trust me, I'm an ordinary guy, but that word I could say potentially could save them from a moment of discouragement at the very least, or it could save them from walking in and just having it out with their boss and just packing up their things and leaving. I don't know, but I think that's important to know what you're good at and then how that can lead to your purpose. Um, Facilitating good dialogue. I mean, that's a passion for podcasters. That's a passion for salespeople, hopefully, or you're in the wrong profession. But that's what I just get. It energizes me when I'm having good dialogue with people on a podcast and they're going and they're telling their story and I'm just in awe of what they've overcome or what they've learned and how they've used it to help people. Like there's people that I interview that are strictly out there serving, and it's just admirable. It's remarkable to have them, humbling to have them on my podcast. But um, it's important to develop a product. When you talk about purpose, it's important to develop something that is bigger than you and goes beyond you. Like it's for other people, like serving other people. I mean, Last in Line is the name of my podcast and platform. That Last in Line is servant leadership. It's at the back of the line. You're empowering those in front of you to go be successful. I don't know if you know this, but the Marine Corps is, I believe, so I'm told, the only branch. And my dad, RIP, was a Marine. But the Marine Corps, the officers eat last, like the colonel eats last, and the enlisted men eat first. And that to me is a picture of servant leadership. But so, yeah, you got to know your purpose and it's got to be bigger than you. And once you find out why you're doing something, then you can create the how and the process, and the journey can kind of develop, and you can take those steps to actually let it come to fruition. But it's got to start with that why, that passion, what motivates, what drives you. Then all of a sudden you start taking steps. Yeah, you're going to be fearful, but you do it anyway. That's what courage is. You do it in the face of fear, but you know it's bigger than you and it's got a purpose beyond you and it's serving other people. So that's the how, or that's the why, but then the how comes after that. So I don't know. That's something that I found as I'm doing this podcast through this last year, that passion for doing it has grown, and then it has also become what I feel like is going to evolve into a bigger purpose that I think God's going to expand and multiply. I just maybe don't know what that is yet, and I don't get to know that, and that's okay. That's called faith. So number 10, 10 things I learned hosting a podcast this year. Number 10, and last but not least, but stretch your YOUR in all caps status quo. Stretch your status quo. Stretch what you feel comfortable doing. Stretch what's the mainstream and the norm for you. So I'm going to talk to myself here. So stretch my status quo, right? That means I've got to go out and promote my platform. That's not something that I naturally bend toward. For lack of a better term, hyping myself. Like promoting the platform. Like I'm not good at that. And I've been in sales for 25 years. I've promoted all kinds of products, and I've been the number one salesperson in the company before. I've taken many trips. I've done well, but promoting myself, look, I got to get better at that. And I know that you can do that in a healthy way, in a humble way. But so that's something that's how I stretch myself. Like I got to stretch beyond my status quo. And then, I've got to invest probably resources, time, and maybe not get anything in return. I've already done a little bit of that. And maybe the picture is bigger than right now. And maybe I need to see beyond this short-sightedness, but maybe I need to invest some money in promoting or marketing or doing this or merchandise and then sow those seeds so that down the road maybe something does multiplied or does materialize from that. But we've got to be willing to make an investment with nothing in return in mind, really. Sometimes, yes, I understand ROI is ROI for a reason. Return on investment, I get it. I can't keep sinking resources into things and then them come back void. But again, that's where faith and prayer and understanding that this thing's bigger than me, and I think that it's a God thing, so I need to be obedient in some of that. And it does involve an investment, right? It involves me investing in myself. There's a seed time and harvest for those of you, to that may or may not be in your Bible as much as you want to be. But the world tries to claim, well, you reap what you sow as their own, and this thing came right out of God's mouth onto paper, and so seed time and harvest is a real thing. So I understand there's a season, and there's a seed time, and there's an investment period, and then the harvest comes later. I understand that, and I will throw a scripture at you. Galatians 6:9 talks about, do not grow weary in doing good, because in due season, right, in the right moment, I'm going to paraphrase, you will reap a harvest if you don't quit. And that's a truth that I stand on. And so it's worth the investment sometimes. And it does stretch me because I really, I don't have a surplus of just discretionary income just dripping off the trees in the backyard. I definitely have every dollar accounted for, and my wife is very good at making sure we stick to our budget and do those things in a smart way. And being good stewards is a huge thing, is very important. But I also know that it's going to take some risks. Spoiler alert, that's going to be my final part of this, but it is going to take a couple of different investments on my part. All right. So, I want to say the last thing on this whole stretch your status quo is going to be, don't be afraid to impress yourself. Like it's okay to say, wow, I learned a lot of editing software and I've learned to be creative in this way, and it turned out a good product. Hey, good job. Like that's good. I'm okay. I'm impressed that I even tried to learn that, because I really didn't want to, because I knew it was going to take time and I didn't want to fail and all this kind of other ridiculous stuff. But I mean, don't be afraid to impress yourself. You can't show me anywhere in the Bible that you can't be impressed with yourself. Like I'm saying, take risks on yourself, believe in yourself in the process, and then and trust God's going to bless it. But stand back and acknowledge your work sometimes. It doesn't mean you got to put an ad in the paper saying, hey, check me out. I'm great. I'm wonderful. I'm not going to get on the roof of my house and with a bullhorn say, hey, I learned iMovie. I'm all that. The line starts over here to buy tickets to come in and shake my hand. That's not going to be it. I think you get it. But don't be afraid to impress yourself. Like do things that stretch you, do those things that you're not comfortable with. And then when you actually realize it wasn't that bad, you stand back and go, wow, okay, what else can I do? What's next? Let's do this. Let's stretch me a little further. So those are the 10 things, and 10 things I learned. I'm sure there was a lot more. 10 things I learned about hosting a podcast in the last 12 months. And it's been a wild ride. It's been a great ride. It's beyond me. It's been a ride that I've just been blessed to be a part of, because I actually stepped out in obedience to what I felt God was leading and calling me to do. And there's definitely been fruit from that. So the future, guys, a couple bullets here is trust and own the process. Okay. This applies in anything. Again, all these can apply to your life, not just podcasts. But trust and own the process. Trust it and own it. Notice I didn't say blame somebody else if the process doesn't go the way you thought. Notice I didn't say quit if it doesn't go the way you thought. Trust it. If you believe in it and you're willing to put in the work and you've got good people around you, Trust that the outcome will be favorable, and then own it. When it is favorable, yeah, hey, I did well. This is a good job. This product is worthwhile. If it fails or a portion of it fails, own it. Okay, let's make an adjustment. Yeah, I missed it. That was on me. I'll own it. Raise your hand, step up, say, I got this. We'll do better next time. Trust and own the process. Next one is take risks. I just talked about that with the stretch your status quo. Take risks, calculated risks. Obviously, you're not going to take out a second mortgage to go buy a bunch of t-shirts and try to sell them on your website. I get that's not what I'm saying, but take risks. Like you're going to need to probably step out and really all a risk is taking information that you've gathered, utilizing your gifts to maybe implement a procedure or a process, and you don't know the outcome yet. That's really what a risk is. You just don't know how it's going to end. But some of those risks are some of the biggest rewards. And so I think you should just, I should just do a little more risk taking maybe going forward. And then finally, crucify comfort. There's the C theme, the alliteration, the C, crucify comfort is back. So crucify comfort, that's self-explanatory. You guys get it. The minute you're comfortable is the minute you start really kind of dying and digressing, I think. The minute you're comfortable in a podcast space is the minute you're just okay. You're just average. You're turning out a decent product, right? You're decent. I mean, we know that James Collins wrote a book, Good to Great, that good is the enemy of great. And I think comfortable is the enemy of growth. And I think that if we're going to be great, there's got to be growth. And we got to crucify our comfort. Get out of your comfort zone. Get uncomfortable. Again, get people around you that have done it before. Learn from their experiences. And I'm telling you, you don't even know what good is coming your way. So that's it. I hope this was good. I've never done a monologue like this. I've never done just me and a microphone. And I would love to get feedback. But again, top 10 things I learned from hosting a podcast. 1, create new connections. 2, caution in comparisons. 3, invite God and ignite conversations. 4, initiate the impossible. 5, lean into learning. 6, include your inner circle. 7, cultivate consistency. 8, empower and encourage. 9, passion to purpose. And 10, stretch your status quo. Hey, I hope this has been good. Till next time, be blessed.